Assalamualaikum and a very good day to all. So for week 9, we will continue to cover on introduction to tendering, types of tender and tendering process. So this is our topic outlines which consists of quick chat, recall for week 7, and then I will proceed to lecture for this week, tendering for part 1. As usual, this is our quick chat on our topics and assessment. Okay, so far for the topics we have covered up until topic for external works and IBS. And then for today, for this class, we will continue on this one, tendering part 1. And then for the assessment, we have one more assessment left, which is test to be discussed or to be confirmed on the next class. Okay. So in our previous class, we have covered on external works and IBS. Okay, so this is the subtopics or the main contents for both topics, external works and IBS. So hopefully all of you have do your own revision regarding this topic. And if you have any question to ask, we will discuss in our next class. Okay, similar go to the other topics. All right, for the first part of tendering, we are going to cover on introduction to tendering, types of tender, and also tendering process. Okay, so we will cover, we will go through one by one for each of the subtopics. For the first part, I would like to share on the overview for tendering. So in overall, tendering is a process of inviting a contractor to bid for a project which must be submitted within a fixed deadline. Okay, so that's the main definition of tendering. However, for the tender, it is a formal written offer to provide goods or services for a particular price. So hopefully we can define these two terms in a correct way. Okay, so basically tendering consists of few key processes. Usually it consists of tender documentation or preparation of tender document. And then for the next process or for the next stage is contractor selection. And then the last step is to evaluate or to select the contractor. Okay, the other thing is that the main purpose for tendering is to select a truly qualified contractor and also to obtain a tender that can be agreed upon and accepted by both parties prior to the establishment of contract. So it is very important to have a good tendering process so that at the end we were able to obtain a good tenderer so that they are able to deliver the work accordingly. Okay, so the next one we are going to cover on types of tender. So for your information, basically there are 4 types of tender such as open tender, selective, pre-bid or direct tender, and the last one we have pre-qualification. Okay. Okay, for the first one, open tender, we have this is basically a common types of tender as compared to the rest. Okay, so it is a common practice by the industry. So later on, I will share the detail of each of these tender types. Okay, for open tender, we will have advertisement or tender notice to promote or to invite the tenderer to bid for the project. Okay, so this advertisement will be used as a tender calling method. Okay, and then for the selective tender, instead of using advertisement, they will have letter of invitation. So this is the main difference between these two types of tender, open and selective. So these two types of tender differ in terms of tender calling method. Okay, and the other difference is that in terms of contractor's grade and also specialization for the contractor to carry out the work. Okay, for the third types of tender, we have pre-bid, or sometimes it is also known as direct tender. So for direct tender, it also consists of letter of invitation. However, the main difference is that it is one-to-one tender. So that's why it is being called as direct tender. Okay. The last types of tender is pre-qualification. This kind of tender also use advertisement, which is similar to the open tender. However, in terms of it's different. There will be invitation to successful tender, or the tenderer, and at the end, the project will be award to the successful tenderer or the contractor. Alright, so we are going to cover one by one for each type of the tender in terms of its details, in terms of its processes, and also advantages and also disadvantages. Okay, so in general, open tender will use advertisement for the tender or its tender calling method. And as I mentioned just now, it is often practiced in the construction industry by the government or private bodies. And as its name mentioned, it is open to all contractor but limited to the requirement given in the tender advertisement. Okay. In terms of the purpose or the function for this kind of tender is that to enable the client to obtain a contractor who can offer minimum price for a construction project without compromising the quality of work and materials. Okay, so this is the purpose or the function of this type of tender, which is of tender. Okay, so the next one, I will share the process or the basically this is a general process for the open tender to be conducted. Okay, firstly, for the advertisement stage, during this stage or during this process, job type, site location, document collection location, closing date, required fee, and also the deposit required for the tender will be advertised in the tender notice or in the advertisement. Okay, at the earliest stage as according to the employer or client's requirement. Okay, so the second stage is that preparation of the tender document. So at this stage, once the contractor or the tenderer want to bid for the project, so they will buy the tender document, and then they need to fill up the tender document with prices, rates, materials, and other required information. Okay. And then after the preparation, they need to meet the deadline. Okay, usually, if I'm not mistaken, the tender duration for the preparation is about 3 months or 90 days. Okay, and then the contractor or the tenderer need to submit the completed tender document for the for the third stage is for the evaluation or selection process. Okay. And during the evaluation or selection of the tender submitted by all tenderers, so the completed tender document will be evaluated and evaluation report will be prepared during this stage. So at the end, for the last stage or last process, the successful tenderer will commence or construct the proposed project. Okay, so this will be the the project will be awarded to the successful tenderer. Okay. So this is the advantages and also disadvantages for this kind of tender, which is open tender. For the advantages of this tender, it is open to all qualified bidders. So there will be no favoritism, and it is also an equal opportunities, especially for the newly registered contractors, and also for sure they have less experience as compared to the um, experienced contractors. Okay, so there will be an equal opportunities for the tenderers and also for the contractors. And the other advantages is that it is highly competitive, which can create a healthy competition among the tenderers. Okay, in contrast, for the disadvantages, this kind of tender will cause a high tendering preparation cost in terms of the tender document preparation, and also it will cause a long tender process as compared to the other kind of tender types. And then sometimes this kind of tender will also lead to underprice of the tender amount, which is can cause low quality of materials and also poor of workmanship. Okay, so I think that's all regarding the open tender. And then for the next one, we have a selective tender. Okay, this is the second type of tender which use the letter of invitation instead of advertisement for the tender. So this tender will use invitation for the tender calling method, which is the main difference as compared to the previous one. Okay, so for this tender, the client or the employer will invite a few non-reputable and also pre-qualified contractors to bid for the project. Okay, so the number of invitation is usually smaller as compared to the open tender, and it is around 5 to 10 tenderers who will invited to bid for the project. And the other thing is that tender selection for the selective tender is based on experience and also skills of the contractors. So that's the overview for the selective tender. In terms of its process of how to conduct the selective tender is that we have several stages here. The first one, there will be shortlisting session where the client or consultant will list out the potential contractors for them to bid to the proposed project. And then for the second stage, letter of invitation will be sent to the potential contractors so that they are aware on the project that the client would like to construct. Okay, after that, the rest of the process start from the preparation up until the commencement is just the same with the previous types of tender, where the contractor need to purchase and fill up the tender document, and then once they have completed all the required information, they need to submit the completed tender to the client for the next stage, which is evaluation and also selection for the successful tenderer. And the successful tenderer will commence or construct the project once they being awarded with the project, right? All right, so similarly, this is the advantages and disadvantages of the second type of tender, which is selective tender. Okay, For the advantages or the benefits for this second type of tender, there will be low possibility of project failure, okay, as compared to the rest of the tender. And then this kind of tender also will helps to reduce cost and number of document tender preparation. Since there will be shortlisting stage, so the tendering process will be shorter as compared to the rest of the tender types. And then for sure it will simplify the tender evaluation process since the number of the tenderer is smaller as compared to the open tender. Okay. However, there are some disadvantages of this type of tender, which is selective tender. The first one, it is very limited, where it has limited opportunities, especially for the newly registered and inexperienced contractor. And also it is focused to a specific category because it is not open to all. And sometimes there will be price alliance between the listed contractors where they try to come up with the, for example, with the ceiling price to bid for the project. So there will be existence of the price alliance between the tenderers. And the other thing is that for the selective tender, the implementation will only be proceed upon the approval from Malaysia's Treasury. Okay, so that's several disadvantages for this tender type. All right, so this is the next one. We have the third type of tender, which is a pre-bid, or sometimes we call it as direct tender. Okay, so for this type of tender, we will use letter of invitation instead of advertisement for the tender. So this one is quite similar to the selective tender. And the client or the consultant will only invite one potential contractor based on its ability and reputation. So that's why it is being called as direct tender, because there will be only one potential contractor to bid for the project. Okay. For the selection criteria, it will be based on the background, experience, and skills for the contractor. Okay. So this is about direct tender. Okay. In terms of how we want to conduct direct tender, for the first process or the first stage is selection stage. So during this stage, the client or the consultant will choose one potential contractor to tender for the project. And then the next stage, the selected contractor shall proceed to directly price the bill of quantities. So in terms of the process, there will, as we notice here, there will be some difference as compared to the previous two tenders, open and selective. Okay, since this is a direct tender, so the process is quite different from the rest. Okay, once the contractor has prepared the bill of quantities, or they have come up with the price for the works, and then they will proceed to the next stage, which is negotiation. Okay, during this stage, the contractor will negotiate with the client for the best value of money to deliver the works or to deliver the project. Okay. Once they have settled with the negotiation, they come up with the best value of money. So the next process is that preparation of the contract document for the contractor. So during this stage, client or consultant will prepare contract document for the contractor to fill in all the required information with the detailed prices, rates, and also required materials for the project. And at the end, just same with the previous types of tender, where the contractor, successful contractor, the selected contractor will proceed with the construction of the proposed project. Okay. In terms of its advantages and disadvantages for this direct tender, usually it will help in terms of quality assurance, okay, as compared to the previous two tenders. And the other thing is that it may have high success rate of the project completion, and it is suitable for the emergencies where the client or the consultant need to conduct the works within a short duration. And then in terms of its advantages, it will reduce the cost and time for the tender preparation, since there will be only one potential contractor to construct the work. Okay. However, this type of tender also has its own disadvantages, because it may resulted in highest price, because it is focusing on the quality and time instead of the cost, as compared to open tender and selective tender. So basically, most of the time, any project that apply this kind of tender type will resulted in highest price as compared to these two type of tender. And the other disadvantages, sometimes it will cause long negotiation period between the contractor or the tenderers with the client. Okay. All right. So this is the final type for the tender, which is pre-qualification. For this type of tender, we will also use advertisement for the tender, which is quite the same with the previous tender of open tender, and in overall it is almost similar to open tender. Okay, so the fourth one will be similar to the first one. The main difference is that the contractor with a strong background and good records only will be selected, as compared to open tenders where all contractors have equal opportunities. So in terms of opportunities, this kind of tender is quite offer a limited opportunities as compared to open tenders. Okay, in terms of how we want to conduct this kind of tender, it will start with the advertisement, which is quite the same with the open tender, where the client will advertise their job type, site location, document collection location, closing date, fee, and also deposit payment. And the contractor will proceed with the tender document preparation, where they need to fill up the prices, rates, materials, and other required information. So after that, they need to submit the completed tender document, and that completed document will be evaluated for the evaluation report to be prepared. And at the end, successful tenderer will construct the proposed project. Okay, so in overall, this process is it is quite similar with the open tender. However, it is different in terms of the pre-qualification criteria. Okay, so there are some possible criteria for the pre-qualification tender. So the first one is local participation, and then the next one we have proven competence and experience, and the other criteria includes integrity, responsibility, financial credibility, and also skill of the contractor or the tenderer. So these several pre-qualification criteria for the um, for the this for this type of tender. Okay. All right. So I think that's all for the several types of tender. Where we have 4 types of tender, such as open, selective, pre-bid, and also the last one we have pre-qualification. All right. So the next subtopic or the next item we will cover on the tendering process. Later on, we will focus on the tender document or the tender document preparation. Okay, for the tendering process, this is a general process for the how we want to enter the tender. Okay, how we want to bid for the project. Okay, so it will start with the pre-tender, proceed to the tender stage, and then we will have evaluation or the selection stage, and at the end, this kind of process will end with the award or the successful tenderer to be awarded with the proposed project. Okay, during the pre-tender stage, expression of interest by the client or the consultant uh, will be prepared. Okay, will be compiled, and then they will prepare the draft for the tender document. And during the tender stage, tender notice or tender advertisement uh, will be shared to all potential contractors or anyone who interested to enter the project or to bid for the project. So they will check for this tender notice, and then any tenderer or any consultant who are interested to bid for the project will proceed with the required documentation. They will prepare the estimation in terms of resource, duration, and cost of the project. And at the end, once they have completed the tender document, so they need to submit the tender to the client for the evaluation. Okay, so during the third stage, the client or the employer need to evaluate the tender in order for them to select the best tenderer. Okay, so if necessary, they need to conduct the evaluation interview in order for them to select the best tenderer in terms of their offer, and they will recommend the potential tender before award the project to the successful tenderer. Okay, so during this award stage, award process, selection of the preferred tender or preferred consultant to construct the project. Okay, so in overall, this is the general tendering process, okay, for the contractors to bid for the project. All right. So the next element or the next content for this topic, we will cover on tender document, which later on we will go through one by one for each of these content, starting from tender notice up until supporting documents. Okay. So herewith I would like to highlight here the difference between the tender of using bill of quantities, and on our right side we have tender based on the specification and drawing. Okay, as we can see here that the main difference for these two kind of process, we have two different documents to be submitted. Okay, for the first one, for the BQ, we have schedule of daywork rate. However, for the specification and drawings, we have schedule of work rate. Okay, later on, I will show the difference between these two types of schedule. And then the other main difference between these two is that in terms of its bill of quantities or BQ. So the first one will come with the quantities. Okay, here we have quantities. If we use the tender or contract using the BQ, and for the specification and drawings, the BQ will not have the quantities. So this one is without quantities. Okay. All right. For the first item under the tender document, we will cover on tender notice. Okay. As I mentioned previously, the main purpose of tender notice is to call for tender. And for sure, we would like to inform all the potential contractor to enter into the tender or to bid for the project. Okay, so this is the main purpose of tender notice, or sometimes we call it as tender advertisement. Okay, advertisement. And then there are some important information or we call the details for the tender notice, including name of client, and then type of registration class, either the contractor to be registered by PKK or CIDB, and then we have head and subhead of the tender notice content. The next item is that time and place for the tender submission, tender box deposit, and also closing date for the tender also will be informed through this tender notice, because the contractor or the tenderer need to submit the tender document within this specified duration for the document preparation. And if they have any special condition or requirements, the client or the consultant will include this kind of condition to be to the tender notice or tender advertisement. Okay. So usually any tender advertisement with more than 200,000 cost will be advertised. However, for any tenders which cost less than that will be posted only on notice board. Okay, so this is the main difference in terms of cost of the tender, either to be advertised or not. Okay, so for the tender document price, the most common price, the minimum one is about for 50 ringgit. Okay, and it is depending on the client. Most of the time the cost is about 50 ringgit per tender document. And then for the tender deposit, just the same, where the client will come out with the amount, and it is varies as compared between the tenders. Okay, the main purpose for this tender deposit is for the security of the client, whereby if the contractor withdraw the tender within the tender validity period, the deposit will not be returned, or the deposit will not be refunded to the contractor. Okay, so basically the tender deposit is a security fee for the client, okay, within the validity period. Okay, that's all for the first item for tender document. And then the next one, we have instruction to tenderers. Okay, for the instruction, so this instruction refers to the any instruction given by the client to correctly fill in all the forms. Okay, so that the contractor to prepare all the required or necessary forms by the client. Okay, so any failure to do so may lead to the tender rejection or any disciplinary action. Okay, so that's why we need the instruction to tenderers so that they will come up with a standardized tender document to be submitted in a correct way. Okay, in terms of the instruction itself, it may differ from one contract to another, where the tenderer sometimes must seal the tender and submit it to the specific address. They are also required to visit the site and perform a detailed inspection, okay, and so on. And all of these are depending on each of the tender or each of the project as requested by the client or by the consultant. Okay, so some of the project will have this kind of instruction. However, not all the project will list out each of these instruction. Okay, so it is depending on the requirement for the individual project or individual tender. All right. So other instruction or terms of condition may include that the tenderers does not comply with the terms and condition will not be accepted. Okay. So any tenderers or any contractors that submit the tender document which is not in compliance with the condition, so at the end their tender document will be rejected. And then the tender validity period is usually within 19 days, where the contractor should withdraw the tender within this period. All right. And then successful contractor will be informed through mail, and any late submission will not be accepted. Okay. So that's why once the tenderer or once the contractor interested to bid for the project, so they need to aware with the deadline, and they need to make sure that they are able to submit the tender within the specified time or specified duration. Okay. All right. So the next item, we are going to look on the checklist for the submission, meaning that the checklist for the tender document submission. Okay, the main purpose for this checklist is to help the tenderer to improve the tender quality prior to the submission, so that during prior to the submission, they can check which of the documents that they have completed, and for the incomplete document they need to prepare, so that at the end they will come out with a good compilation of a complete tender document. Okay, and the other purpose for this checklist is to guide the tenderer to prepare tender offer, relevant forms, schedules, appendices, and particular requirement by the client in order to avoid any rejection due to incompleteness, mistakes, and also lack of clarity. Okay, so by having this checklist, the tenderer or the contractor are able to check their documentation throughout the tender document preparation. All right. Okay, so the next one, I think this is the fourth content or the fourth element under the tender document. We have articles of agreement. Okay. For the articles of agreement, the main purpose is that to outline the general agreement between both contractual parties, okay, which is usually consists of contract date. Here we have contract number or contract date, and then we need to include the project name, okay, so that we will have a clear statement of what type of project or what kind of project to be constructed. And in these articles of agreement, there will be right and responsibilities of the related parties. Okay, and then contractual parties name will also will be included in these articles of agreement. Sometimes general terms that summarize the condition of contract will also included in this agreement. Okay. All right. So the next one we have form of tender. Right. So basically the content of tender document is quite straightforward. However, we need to go through one by one, so at the end we are able to understand the requirement that needs to be submitted and that need to be compiled in order for us to have a complete tender document. Okay, so that's why we need to go through one by one. All right. For the form of tender, the main purpose is that basically it is an important document to show that the contractors offer their bid for the project. So the basic contents for the form of tender are include tender validity period, tender sum, period of work completion, any alternative offered by the contractor, and also any express agreement to any particular condition such as penalties or permission. Okay, so all of this content will be included into the form of tender. I think there are some mistakes here, so I will do the correction for the form of tender. All right. So the next one we have, I think this is the sixth item, condition of contract, which is COC. Okay, COC are required in order to present a detailed explanation of the agreed contract. Okay, so based on the COC, the detailed information, the detailed what we call requirements for the both parties to agree upon and also to comply with will be included in this contract. Okay, so usually the contents for COC include terminology to be used in the form of contract such as SO, which is stand for superintendent officer, architect, and also main contractor. And then the rights and responsibilities of the related parties will also be included in this contract, condition of contract, and any explanation on work program and administration also can be included into this condition of contract. Okay, so on our right side, we have example or sample of standard form of contract to be used where BQ form part of the contract. So the first one, standard form of contract using BQ. Okay. The other one is based on the drawings and specification. Okay. So this is what we call standard form of contract by Public Work Department or JKR. Okay, so we have PWD form 203A for BQ, and then we have 203 for drawings and specification. Right? Okay. Okay, so regarding the COC, condition of contract, there are several items that expressly made known to the tenderers, such as requirement of sectional completion, rate of LAD, liquidated ascertained damages, length of DLP, defect liability period, mode of payment, minimum value of work to be executed before first and subsequent payment interim certificate issued, certification and honorary periods of payment, and also detailed insurance required. Okay, so this is some of the items that expressly made known to the tenderers based on the COC. Okay, sorry. Right. So Okay. The next one we have uh, special provision to the COC, which is the next item under tender document. Okay, the main purpose of special provision to the COC is to allow for any inclusion of special provision to the COC. So any special provisions, any special condition or requirements by the client will be included in this items or in this documentation. Okay, so it may include the following, such as advance payment to the contractor, fluctuation of material prices, restriction of imported materials, performance guarantee sum against performance bond. Okay, so this is some of the example to be included in the special provision to the COC. All right. So the next one we have LA, which is letter of acceptance. Okay. For the letter of acceptance, it is usually that the contractor does not require to fill in this form during the tender, because this LA will be issued by the client to the successful tenderer on client intentions to accept the tender offer. Okay, so any issuance of LA will consist of the amount of contract sum, right? Period of works, date of site possession, and also date of project completion. Okay, so this is some of the items to be included in the issuance of LA, letter of acceptance. All right. All right. So the next one we have specification. Okay, for the specification, the main purpose is to assist the contractor, amplify the drawings, and also to specify the quality of material, description of method of work, and minimum standard of work. Okay. For your information, Public Work Department, PWD or JKR in Malaysia has adopted standard specification for building works according to trade. So this document for the specification, it is effective from 28 March in 2014. Okay, so currently it is almost about uh, 7 years of enforcement or effectiveness of this document. Okay, so we have standard specification for building works 2014 by JKR or PWD. Okay, for the details, all of you may search for this document, okay, to review on the content for this specification. Right, so in general, this document consists the specification for building works according to trade, where they have several types of trade, including preliminary works until the signage works. Okay, so based on the documentation, it consists a detailed specification for all these works, all these trade. Okay, so that it is easier for the tenderer, for the contractor to come out with the good specification of the works to be carried out. All right. Okay. All right. So the next one, I will explain on the schedule of day work versus the work rates. Okay. The first one on our left side will be used for the BQ, standard form of contract using BQ, and then this one for the which based on the specification and drawing. For the day work rates, it is a list of rate for every work to be conducted by workers, which is there will be rate per hour, okay, for the labor to construct the work, and then it will ease the contractor to estimate the cost. They will be listed out by trades such as tiler, carpenter or concreter, and etc. Okay, so there will be a detailed rates for the day work to be conducted. And then for the work rates, they will be used for tender with specification and drawings with lump sum BQ, and the price includes the labor cost. Okay, so that's the main difference between the work rates and also work rates. Okay, abang dengar lah. Sekejap luar dah ni. Duduk saya kena buka balik. Okay, so next one, we will look at on the BQ, bill of quantities. Okay, for the BQ, it is taking off and measurement. So basically, it's related to the taking off and measurement. So these two will be prepared based on the drawings to come out with the BQ. BQ is a prime document to be issued as part of the tender document. Okay, so the main purpose of BQ is to serve as a basis of the tender sum and ultimately the contract sum for the successful tenderer. Alright, in terms of the standard method for BQ preparation, it is categorized into two types. The first one we have building works, and the other one we have infrastructure works. Okay, for the first one, standard method of measurement for building works by RISM, which is SM2, will be referred for the building works measurement. And then for the infrastructure works, we will refer to the CESMM, which is Civil Engineering Standard Method of Measurement, issued by ICE UK or Construction Industry Board, CIS, Construction Industry Standard CIS by CIDB. Okay, so that's the main different standard method of BQ preparation, depending on the type of works to be completed. Okay, so this is the example or what I have mentioned just now. Okay, for the building works, we need to refer to SMM2, Standard Method of Measurement 2. Okay, which being published by the Institution of Surveyors Malaysia. And then for the infrastructure of civil engineering works, we usually refer to these two types of document or standard, CESMM, and also we have CIS, right? Okay, this is the sample of BQ or the example of the common BQ that the contractor need to prepare for them to bid for the project. Okay, so generally BQ consists of item or number. Okay, here we have item or number. Then we have column for description, unit, and also quantity. And then rate and amount to be priced by the tenderer. Okay, so the tenderer need to specify the amount, either the unit either in meter, meter square, or meter cube, and with the specific quantity to be multiplied with the rate. So at the end, we will come out with the amount to be priced. Okay. So there are several typical contents of BQ, such as preliminary works, measure works, prime cost sum, provisional sum, and at the end, we will have the summary of tender. Okay, so we will going to look at each of these typical content. All right. So for the preliminaries content or preliminaries works, so this is the general content for this for the item or general item fall under the preliminary, such as general requirements. And then we also have employer, contractor, and local authorities requirements. So any requirements by these parties will be included into the preliminary section, right? And then we also have the measured word section, or the what we call the part or the elements for measure of work under the BQ. Okay, so this section or this element encompasses the detailed quantification of works involved in the scope of work, such as earthworks, piling works, or foundation, building or civil engineering works, and we also have external or other associated works. Okay, so all these measured works will be included in this section. All right, the next one we have prime cost sum. Okay, the main purpose is to denote the works to be carried out by the nominated subcontractor, NSC, nominated supplier under the direction of the MC, main contractor. So this is the example of the prime cost sum, where they have specified the nature of work, and then the unit to be filled by the main contractor, and the estimated amount that they price for the works or for the project. Okay, so this is the example of prime cost sum. And the other one, we have provisional sum, which is to denote any works that anticipated to be carried out and works that cannot be foreseen, cannot be accurately designed or determined at the time of tender. So any works that cannot be determined during the tender stage will be included in this provisional sum. Provisional sum. Okay, so the specified nature of work will be included in this description, and also they will have the estimated amount. As compared to the prime cost sum, there will be no specific unit to be filled here. They just come with the lump sum or estimated amount. Okay. All right. So BQ. Okay, we have covered the BQ. The next one, we have the next element of drawing. Okay. So drawing is part of the tender document with the purpose of to ease the contractor to estimate the cost, or to come up with the BQ, and to plan the works to be conducted on site. Okay. So this drawing contains a detailed plan from architectural, structural drawing, and also job description. Okay. There are some typical drawings or typical types of drawing issued to the tenderer, including this, okay, such as miscellaneous or detailed drawing, single line or schematic drawing, isometry, and so on. Okay, all of these are the typical drawings to be issued to the tenderer. So they will use these kind of drawings to come out with the price, to come out with the detail what we call price of the works. Okay. And then the next item or the next element is form of guarantee. Okay, form of guarantee with the purpose of to ensure that the contractor fulfills the contractual obligation towards the completion of contract. So this kind of form of guarantee will be used for performance bond and also advance payment. Okay. So on our right side, this is the example for the form of guarantee. All right. Okay, I think the last item is supporting document, which is included under the tender document. Okay, so supporting document may include the followings for the tender evaluation. So the evaluator, the client will have the information on background of the tenderer, financial data, bank or financial institution report on financial standing of the tenderer, work experience record, list of current projects, technical staff, and also construction plans and equipment. Okay, so all of this will be supporting document to the submission of the tender document, right? So I think that's all the what we call the content of the tender document. Okay, for the tenderer to prepare to what we call to compile all these requirements, all these documents for the client. Okay, in order for them to bid for the project, to tender for the project. So I think that's all from me for the first part of tendering. Okay, so the next part will be continue on our class, which is tendering part 2. Alright, any question regarding this topic to be discussed in our class? Okay, that's all from me. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.